Imagine the thin pre-dawn on the plains, that biting cold, the sky still purple, and the stars refusing to yield to the first breath of day. Before any bellow from the herd, before any word cuts through the dust, a ribbon of blue smoke is already dancing above the Chuck Wagon. There, a man who outranks the trail boss whenever hunger hits is already on his feet. The cook, the cookie, king of the fire and owner of the bell that summons the outfit. The smell is of strong coffee, that cowboy coffee that hits your nose first and then your soul. If you can already smell that little wisp in your imagination, hit like now and comment, "I've heard Cookie S. Bell," and let S ride into what cowboys really ate in the Old West. Cookie starts with the essential, coffee. Roasted beans in a sack, ground by hand crank, boiled in a kettle blackened by use. There's an old secret many swore by, eggshells in the coffee to clarify the brew and tame the bitterness, making the grounds settle to the bottom. Sometimes he'd toss in a pinch of salt or a touch of beaten egg white. Coffee wasn't a luxury, it was fuel. The most coveted brand? Many a trail hand swore by Arbuckles, which came in a sack with a peppermint candy tucked inside, a rare sweet the cookie traded for help around camp. Be honest, would you drink that cowboy coffee, boiled hard with eggshells in the pot? Comment, "I'm in" or "I'm out." While the water sings, the griddle groans. Breakfast on the frontier wasn't a magazine cover, it was hard labor in food form. Bacon, often salt pork, rendering its fat in a cast-iron skillet. In that same fat, rustic flapjacks, blustering with bubbles and flipping through the air with the snap of a spatula. Soda biscuits, or baking powder biscuits as supplies allowed, came out steaming from the Dutch oven buried in the coals, with a crunchy crust and a tender crumb. Pinto beans, slow-cooked all night, with a bay leaf if there was one, and a chunk of salt pork for perfume and heft. If you love a real-deal breakfast, drop a like, because this Western table only opens for those who show up early. Beans were law, nutritious, cheap, easy to haul in cloth sacks. Cookie soaked them, changed the water when he could, threw them in the heavy pot, and let them go for hours over low heat, stirring now and then, seasoning with salt, black pepper, and when the trail crossed the Mexico-tinted deep of Texas, a handful of dried chilies beaten in a mortar. It wasn't the modern chili full of extras. This was pure muscle. Beans, meat, when there was some to spare. A thick broth and a heat that chased sleep from the weariest hand. Then came the bread. Biscuits, sure. But also corn dodgers, shaped in the hand and fried in that same bacon grease, forming a golden crust that crackles under your teeth. Would you try those corn dodgers? Comment, "I want to try," and send this video to that friend who loves rustic food. At the heart of the outfit, the Chuck Wagon carried the world. Flour in barrels, beans in sacks, coffee in boxes, rare sugar, precious salt, pepper, baking soda and baking powder, lard for frying and preserving, sometimes molasses or sorghum syrup. Among the most prized cans, tomatoes and peaches. Canned tomatoes got famous not only for flavor, but because, without anyone talking about vitamin C back then, they helped keep folks healthy on a diet dominated by salted meat and bread. Now and then, sweetened condensed milk, heavy luxury for a wagon, and even rice to break up the monotony. Charles Goodnight, back in 1866, adapted a freighter's wagon into a rolling kitchen with drawers, a cutting board, and a stove iron, and that became the standard for big cattle drives. Quick pause. If you dig these historical tidbits, hit like now and share with someone who marathons westerns. And the meat? Of course there was meat. The herd was meat on the hoof. But a cowboy didn't eat steak every day. On the trail, fresh meat only showed up when an animal broke a leg, got sick, or when they paused long enough to cut, salt, and smoke. Otherwise, the protein arrived as jerky, hung off the side of the wagon, cured by sun and wind, chewed like you chew the road itself. Sometimes, in meetings with native peoples farther north, pemmican appeared, a mix of pounded dried meat with fat and wild berries. If you're liking this unvarnished picture, drop a "keep it coming" in the comments, and let's ride. Lunch, if you can call it lunch, was pragmatic. Cold, fast food that could be swallowed without dismounting. Morning biscuits, a strip of jerky, a swallow of lukewarm coffee in a dented tin mug. Water? Always watched. Sometimes murky from a puddle, filtered through a bandana, boiled when possible. Thirst is an old enemy. On a hard push, some cowboys would tuck a pebble in the mouth to keep the saliva going. An old-timer S-trick, and carry on. If you can picture that kind of grind, comment "hard life" and send this to anyone who thinks cowboying was just shiny spurs and a hat. Dinner, now that was the gathering, the circle around the fire, big pot for stew, spoons clattering against tin plates, conversation flowing. Some nights brought son-of-a-gun stew, or the legendary son-of-a-bitch stew, a bold mix that used the offal from a freshly slaughtered calf, heart, liver, kidneys, sometimes even brain and sweetbreads. Strong, heady with onions when there were any, spice to round off the stronger flavors. It shocked the hungry and delighted those who loved depth. Some swore it cured fatigue. Would you take on this rootsy stew? Hit like and write "I'm in" or "I'll pass." On Sundays, when the trail allowed, Cookie tried to please. A Dutch oven cake with molasses, canned peaches turning into a cobbler under a lid, buried in coals, or generous flapjacks smothered in syrup. Simple cake, a touch of sweet for folks who tasted only salt, smoke, and wind all week. Moments like these made many swear Cookie had more pull than the trail boss, because the herd's mood flipped with a dessert. And if you like sweets with history, comment "cobbler" and share with your sweet-tooth friend. Let's talk technique. The Dutch oven is the black heart of the trail kitchen. Thick iron, heavy lid. To bake, coals below and coals on top, counted by eye and by the experience of a hand that knows heat. That's how bread comes out with a crust, how biscuits rise even without milk, how beans go silky and broths turn luscious. The cast-iron skillet, inseparable companion, takes the pounding, from bacon to cornbread without blinking, and builds that patina that's a memory of meals. If you have a cast-iron skillet at home, comment "got one" and hit a thumbs up, because this is forever cooking. And the seasonings? Simple, direct, no fuss. Salt, black pepper, sometimes crushed dried chilies, cumin trailing in from Mexican vaqueros, garlic when possible, onions when luck smiled. Hot sauce, like Tabasco, which started popping up at the end of the 19th century, could appear as a treasure in a small bottle. Vinegar was a friend for cooking tough meat or brightening beans. Pickles, when town was near, were a welcome guest at the table. Would you splash chili heat on cowboy beans? Comment "bring the heat." Speak of Mexico and you're talking influence. Cowboys learned much from vaqueros. Corn tortillas as plate and bread, dried chilies, the habit of enriching meat with spice and patience. Along the border, it wasn't rare to see hot atole on a cold morning, or pinole, toasted ground corn, turning into a trail porridge. The Old West is a marriage of traditions, indigenous, Mexican, Anglo, Black, each leaving flavor in the dust-swirled cauldron. Like this true-to-life mix, tap like and drop a "long live the mix" in the comments. Now let's not romanticize. There was hunger and there was sickness. With so much salted food and so few fresh greens, scurvy came knocking, tender gums, crushing fatigue. Without knowing the word vitamin, folks learned to prize canned tomatoes, lemons and oranges when they appeared, onions and potatoes when towns were near. Every market day was a party, every bite of fruit a reminder there was a world beyond endless pasture. If you felt that on a long road trip, comment "nothing like fresh fruit." Water dictated the menu. In drought, beans became a luxury, coffee ran thin, fat was guarded like gold. In rain and mud, the challenge was to keep the coals alive, protect the salt, improvise shelter. A good cowboy rode and cooked with what he had, and what he had often was just enough. On those days, Cookie S rule stood firm. Nobody complains about the food. Whoever complains washes dishes and sleeps far from the fire. If you respect Cookie, comment, "Yes, sir, Cookie." And when the outfit hit a town, the explosion of desire. A saloon with steak and eggs, soft white bread, golden apple pie, pickled eggs floating in a jar, cheese melting under a hot griddle. Money in your pocket after months of dust became a generous slice of pie. And a frothy mug. And of course stories, because a good cowboy feeds belly and imagination in the same place. If you'd beeline for the pie, comment pie, and tag that friend who'd go straight to the saloon with you. There were ranch traditions too, castration day, an improvised barbecue, meat over flames, ribs, cuts that everyone fights over today, but back then were supper before they were fashion. And yes, prairie oysters, breaded and fried bull testicles, were a cowhand's snack. Not for shock value, but from a culture of not wasting and eating what land and cattle gave. Tough, real. Would you take that bite? Comment, "I'm hardcore." In the silence before dawn, whoever pulled guard got a mug of fresh coffee and a hard little roll crisped in the skillet. The wind cut, the herd grumbled, eyes learned to hunt shadows. On those shifts, a can of peaches was an absolute luxury. 2 sweet spoonfuls could change a man's morale, and Cookie knew it. He measured sugar like a man measures words. If this scene got you, drop a like and comment "Long night." Myths and truths. A cowboy didn't feast on juicy steak every day. He ate a lot of beans, salt pork, rustic bread, coffee, and whatever the road allowed. When luck helped, he hunted rabbit, wild turkey, antelope, or deer. When he passed by a friendly homestead, eggs and milk changed the week. But the backbone was the food that could handle dust, jolts, and time. More salt than salad, more smoke than perfume. And still, there was flavor, because hunger seasons everything, and a skilled hand works miracles. Enjoy having the myth stripped away? Comment Old West reality, and share with someone who needs to hear it. The preferred tools were iron, Dutch oven, skillet, grate. Sand and ashes doubled as improvised scouring soap. Cutlery clinked like music, repurposed cans became mugs, and the sheen of tin dotted the outfit's trail like stars on the ground. When a plate chipped, it became a shovel. When the shovel bent, it became a story. That was the West, inventing with what the day gives. If you love these clever hacks, hit like now. There was also the economy of fat. Lard was gold. It fried, seared, perfumed, and preserved meat in a pot when the night turned cold. Meat simmered and submerged in firmed-up lard, stored away from the sun, could become a road lunch. The cowboy kitchen, without calling it that, practiced confit out of necessity. The flavor it yields, mingled with wood smoke and dust, is the signature of a time that won't return. Ever eaten something preserved in lard? Comment, frontier confit. When the outfit crossed more Hispanic lands, the tortilla became plate, spoon, and bread all at once. Practical, portable, a borderland culture that sticks. Chili con carne, trail style, was simple. Rehydrated jerky, ground chilies, cumin, a bit of garlic and whatever onion there was. Thick, spicy, servant of the cold night. Some more inventive cookies molded chili bricks with fat and seasoning to carry. And rehydrate in a pinch. If chili is your jam, comment Viva Chili. In the day's grind, the rhythm of the food trained the body. Heavy mornings, light lunch, restorative nights. Beans warmed all day in a corner of the fire, asking for a stir the way a story asks to be told. Every cowboy had a favorite dish, but everyone knew the trail was in charge. On stampede nights, nobody ate right. On a long wait at a river ford, there was time enough to bake a proper loaf. The kitchen steered the herd too. If you want a part 2 telling of a stampede right at supper time, comment "Want more." Talk sugar, and you're talking celebration. The peppermint tucked in Arbuckle coffee, molasses dripping on bread, canned peaches turning into cobbler under the Dutch oven lid. Sometimes brown sugar showed up like a guest. Cookie kept it hidden and meted it out with an invisible ruler. A handful today, a reward tomorrow. Food is morale, and morale moves a herd. If you'd make a good cookie, comment, "I run the fire." Let's get to the tricks. To cook beans faster, start with hot water and a heavy pot. To tenderize old beef, a long simmer in broth with a splash of vinegar and a firm hand with spices. To get bread to rise without milk, the right dose of baking powder, fat added gradually, and heat from above and below. To keep coffee from going cold, kettle spout ready, and a live hand for feeding coals. These are bookless arts passed mouth to mouth. If you like these tricks, leave a thumbs up and comment which one you'll try at home. There was roughness that turned into poetry. Cans reborn as cups that click against the lip, a wooden spoon with a chunk of smoke embedded in its grain, a knife that cuts steak and opens letters. There were flies and there was dust, but there was also sunrise falling over a fresh-baked loaf, turning the simple into the sacred. There was the laugh of the quietest hand when the cobbler came out hot and caught a curious finger. There was the respectful hush when Cookie's bell rang for the last ladle of stew. If that image grabbed you, comment, "Dust poetry." The Old West had invisible hierarchies too. First eat the men who pulled night guard, then those who roped till their arms ached, and last of all, Cookie, tired, but watching every plate. Anyone who griped about the food learned respect. When he sat early in the dew without an extra helping, everyone knew a man without a plate is a man without ground. Eating was more than feeding. It was remembering the road ends, that the ranch exists, that someone waits. If stories like this move you, hit like and share with someone who needs this ride. When night fell, the fire became the West's television, sparks rising, hooves sounding somewhere far off, a mug passing from hand to hand. Recipes were born there that won't fit in a book, because they depend on wind, wood, mood, and dust. They depend on time, that seasoning no market sells. And at that fire, cowboys ate what truly kept them going. Whatever there was, not banquet, not famine, but the hard, honest middle ground of someone who sleeps with his hat for a pillow. If you made it this far, comment "Fire S lit" and send it to someone who'll enjoy it with you. Now let's sum it up with flavor. Cowboys ate slow-cooked beans, salt pork, Dutch oven rustic breads, corn dodgers, jerky, offal stews on lucky days, strong black coffee, canned peaches and tomatoes when town smiled on them, chilies and cumin when the border breathed its spices, pies and eggs when the saloon welcomed them, barbecue on ranch days, tortillas and chili along the Hispanic Trail, and amid all that, a lot of ingenuity to turn a few ingredients into sustenance and memory. If this trip through the Old West's plate made you hungry for history, drop a like right now, comment which dish you'd try first, and share with someone who loves frontier cooking. And before Cookie's bell rings one last time, a heartfelt ask: if you like this kind of content, if this narration made you feel the smell of coffee, the bacon smoke, and the heat of the Dutch oven, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you don't miss the next journeys through time. Your subscription helps this outfit keep moving down the trail, and I'll meet you at the next camp.